Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special broadcast with myself, Lee Harris, and Pam Gregory. And we are here creating something called Looking Ahead. So I have for many years done a solstice broadcast that usually takes a look at the second half of the year. Pam and I have been friends now for about 6 years, we've worked out, and I love and respect Pam's work. And we've done a few collaborative things over the years, but I asked Pam, would she be willing to join forces with me to do this? I know that Pam will come a little more from the astrology side, I will come a little more from the intuitive side, but as we often share when we speak personally, it's funny how we often cross over in what we receive. So today is going to be a look at that, and welcome to those of you who don't know me or perhaps are new to Pam, and we're both out there on YouTube every month putting free videos out that can hopefully help you navigate our very tumultuous, changing and transformational world with a little more grace, hopefully. Pam, it's great to be doing this with you.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled and excited. It's always lovely to share with you, Lee, whether it's personally or professionally. So it's an absolute joy to be with you here, and I hope we can share a little bit of big love out there for the world.
Absolutely, my friend, absolutely. Well, I know what we said we would do is that you're going to share the themes that you've received first, then I'll share the themes that I've received, and we can reflect on them a little bit together. And then you're going to speak to my guides, the Z's, for the last part. So without further ado, Pam, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lee. So I'm going to talk about four themes which I think will be particularly prominent in this second half of 2025. And some of them are just enlarging on what has already been happening. Some of them I think, are a little newer than that, a shift of focus. But the one I want to start with, which is so big and I think will get much bigger in the second half, is revolution. Revolution, the power shifting to the people. Now, as many of you know who follow my work, the very fact that Pluto is in Aquarius signifies that, because if we look back to historical periods, there has always been revolution of the people against top-down authority, which was considered authoritarian. So we have that already, and that's in place, and that's going to run till 2044. But what is also fascinating on top of that is I was speaking to an American astrologer a couple of weeks ago who has looked back over 3,000 years in her research, the 20 years research, and discovered that when Pluto moves what's called out of bounds, out of the normal realms of its declination, and when it moves out of bounds to the south, and as I said, this is over 3,000 years of research, there is always a shift of power to the people. So this really reinforces what I'm seeing. Now, we've seen a lot of this already. We've seen it in Serbia, Hungary, Germany, France, Netherlands, UK, America, not always on the nightly news, but there's a lot of kinetic revolution. But also I think this is going to be an energetic shift, simply a revolution of choice, of I am not going to be part of this old system. I'm going to make different choices to remove myself from this particular paradigm. And that's happening lickety split. That's happening really quickly. So it doesn't have to be literally feet on the ground on the streets. It's an increasing recognition of our energetic sovereignty. And that's because Saturn and Neptune are in Aries. And so that sense of I am running my own life, I'm in control of my own destiny, is getting stronger by the day with people. So I see the revolution in an energetic sense as well as a boots on the ground sense. The second one is increasing seismic activity. And I've been talking about this through the year, but I think we are going to start to see a lot more of this. As Lee and I are recording this today, we have a lot of not only earthquake activity, we've had two very big earthquakes in South America, just today, a 6.4 and a 6.3 in South America, but we have a lot of volcanic activity as well. So as of today, Mount Etna in Italy, Kilauea in Hawaii, the Volcano de Fuego in Guatemala, the supervolcano in Campi Flegrei Also the underwater volcano in Axial Seamount, which is about 300 miles off the coast of Oregon. And those are just some examples of what we're seeing. Now, if I'm looking at the astrology, I think that seismic activity, well, it will be seismic in all respects, politically, financially, but I'm talking environmentally here. I think that will get stronger, and I think particularly underwater volcanoes will get stronger. And the reason I'm saying that is because of the symbolism of Homer and the symbol which she was said in her part of the myth of her fire goddess aspect, that she was said to birth the 8 islands of Hawaii. So this eruptive quality that she has, and she is currently square to Pluto, planet of transformation over the next 3 years. And the two of those planets are aspecting Sedna. And Sedna is the goddess of the deep Arctic wastes. So deep, deep seas. And so I think volcanoes that are currently underwater are going to start to become more lively. And this is really, all of this seismic activity, if you can see it in the context of really the Earth just going through her own upgrade, she and we are erupting into our awakening in truth. We're shifting to the next level. And so all of these, the shaking off of the old trauma and toxicity that the Earth is going through is going to purge and purify her to take her to the next level, and we are going with her. So if you see it in that context of, yes, I do think we may see changes in landmass, etc. I think we'll see some exquisite, pure land emerging that is incredibly fertile. And I think we're going to see more of that. And that will literally be new Earth, literally new Earth. So we may find that we are migrating to different geographies because the land is so magnetic and so fertile. And linked to that, which is really exciting, I think we are in the process of seeing a lot of breakthroughs in satellite technology. Now, many of you may be aware of the discoveries underneath the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, particularly the Khafre pyramid, where they've discovered kind of columns leading into tubes, and they go down by 2 kilometers. And clearly they are very, very advanced technology, probably to do with energy or power generation in some kind. But the very fact that they were discovered is very remarkable, because they used what's called synthetic aperture radar pulses, to actually penetrate the ground to detect these buildings or these formations, which were clearly built by some very advanced, intelligent cultures. So that is one very big example that people may be aware of. Just yesterday, I discovered that underneath the deep Pacific, an ancient civilization that has been discovered called Nan Madol, which is 14,000 years old. And I'm coming across these on a fairly regular basis, these sunken temples, sunken ancient cities, but clearly were built with great intelligence ahead of where we are at currently. But what is exciting in terms of this theme is the advanced technology that's enabling this. Because, for instance, underneath the Antarctic now, they've discovered, again, via some very advanced technology called radar sat, that there's some land about the size of Wales that is 34 million years old, that was originally teeming with life. And some dark energy cameras going out into space, just 2 days ago I heard about this, have been able to detect a new dwarf planet that has a 25,000-year orbit. That is the longest orbit of any planetary body that we're aware of. It doesn't even have a name at this point, it's got a number. So what this theme is about is, I've always felt intuitively that we would get much greater understanding of the out there, deeper into the cosmos, because that every time Pluto goes into Aquarius, that's what happens. But also a much greater understanding of the deep seas, the ancient civilizations, the plants, the medicines, maybe the inner earth beings even beneath those deep seas. that just a handful of people are starting to channel now. But this is also a reflection, I feel, of our expanding consciousness and our expanding inner vision. Because everything is fractal. If we're discovering more of the out there, it's because we're expanding in here. it's just a mirror. It's just an echo. And for astrologers, what is absolutely fascinating, and I only discovered this yesterday, is that on the day of Neptune's discovery, on the 24th of September 1846, it was in conjunction to Saturn, exactly at 25 degrees of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the sign to do with new discoveries. Of course, now we have another Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the creator degree, the 0 degrees of Aries. So this is the sign of the pioneer. And so it is absolutely fascinating that what we have right now, and for this year, and particularly exact in February next year, we have an echo of when Neptune was discovered. Neptune is to do with the deep seas and the oceans, but it's also very linked to photography. Because when it was discovered in 1846, this was really the beginning of the acceleration of photography. It was in Aquarius when it was discovered. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. That's to do with new technology, and in particular, radar, as it developed later. And what we have now, I hope I'm being clear here.
Very clear.
Okay, what we have now is an aspect between Neptune, a sextile between Neptune and Uranus, that we will have for the next 2 to 3 years. So now we have a combination of photography and new technology, particularly radar. And this is going to absolutely revolutionize our discoveries of the out there and the deep down in here. But again, this is a reflection of our expanding consciousness. And what I think this is going to do, apart from putting very large question marks around our up to now current understanding of history, is really going to say, boy, we thought we have been instructed or encouraged to believe that we are the pinnacle of civilization. Actually, those guys were way, way, way ahead of us. And this will be the beginning of more contact with them, which will enable us as humanity to go in leaps and bounds in many, many ways, in our consciousness, in our technology, in our understanding of how reality works, in all of that. So that's a really, really exciting one, I think. And the other one was, and it kind of links back to it eventually, to that same theme I'm talking about, but I do see in the second half of this year and ongoing, but particularly the second half, more of a strain on the old power grids, because the new renewable technology like wind and solar, which has been very encouraged, of course, and seems so desirable, and I have mentioned this in 1 or 2 videos, but I want to take it further here, is it is incompatible to some degree with the old power grids, because it comes in surges. Number one is a problem. They can't modify the surges if it's a windy day. Secondly, it comes in, as I understand, as direct current, and the old power grids have to change that to alternating current to make it usable. So that is going to strain our old power grid. So I do potentially see more power outages, particularly going into winter time for the Northern Hemisphere. But what this will move us to quite quickly, I hope, is towards magnetism being our source of power rather than electricity. It will move us to free energy, 0-point energy. And once we move to that, to 0-point energy and our energy coming from magnetism, it will be free. It will be free across the world. And so, I was just reading a couple of days ago that some Australian engineers have developed a motor that is powered by light. So we are going to see some incredibly exciting discoveries, innovations, remembrances, actually, because, of course, this was found many years ago, but it hasn't been publicly available to us. But what this is going to enable is an equalization economically across the world, because we won't have to pay for energy going forwards. And that's going to be amazing for third world countries, very poor country, people living in African villages, who have very limited electricity. And so that is going to help a feeling of equalization, which is very much Aquarian energy. And it is also going to mean that prices come down quite dramatically, because we're not going to be paying sky-high prices for our fuel and to power our homes. And so the way energy will work in our homes in future, I think, is almost unimaginable compared to where we are right now. And that is beginning already, because we've seen big power outages in Portugal, in Spain, and parts of France recently. We had a big hit here in the UK recently. They are going to continue, partly because the weather is going to be more extreme, and that will test the power grid, partly because you're in peak of solar cycle 25, and in addition to that, the Earth has never been more electrified than it currently is, which cause bigger geomagnetic storms, and the geomagnetic storms appear to be linked to the increased seismic activity. Everything is connected. So all of these things, in a way, are connected, but all of them are actually going to take us to a way better place. We are just going through some of the massive change in turbulence this year, and to some extent next year. But then we start to really reap the harvest, reap the blossom of what we are feeling, seeing, experiencing. So see it in this bigger context of new Earth, new human, beauty, much less toxicity and pollution in the Earth, because if it comes from magnetism and we step back from fossil fuels, it will be a very different world that we're living in. And so welcome it. Even if you have a power outage, try to see it in that bigger context, despite being uncomfortable. So those are the ones I sort of came up with, Lee, and I don't know whether there's any overlap with some of the ones that you've been looking at. I think for one of them, for sure, there is.
Yeah, I shared with you the one theme that I had about revolution. And but it's funny, Pam, before I kind of share with what I got, two things you said really hit me. And number one, so for those of you who don't know me, part of my work is being a channeler. So I'm an intuitive, which is where I intuit from the more human level, but I also channel my guides who are coming from a very different dimension. And they're always talking about, we're here to remember the power that we always had, and how our history and what we've been taught is a very reduced and dumbed down version of who we really are, what we really are, what we're capable of. And so a few different things you said, and also what you were talking about with free energy, which we know was created, or should I say revealed a long, long time ago, but was suppressed. So that certain people could control the system around power and around finance. And it makes sense, really, that with everything that you're talking about, because you're such a brilliant researcher and historian around all this stuff, that's an area I don't go to. So that's why I always love hearing your insights and what you've gathered in those areas. It does explain a lot about why, in order to get to that point, we have to have a breakdown in the current system and in the current leadership. So my first theme kind of goes there. So if you're ready, I'll go to what I received. Okay.
Very fascinated.
So the first thing that I got was a perspective check, which is, we're in an old world breakdown for a new world breakthrough. So we're in an old world breakdown for a new world breakthrough. Global systems are changing in tandem with rising consciousness. And we are also in a personal consciousness change. One of the things you just shared, which we're both very in alignment on, because we've both shared this in our work. Whatever is happening outside affects us and changes who we are, because we're in relationship to the world around us, and we've been trained to be in relationship to what's going on outside us. So as you start to see some of that dismantling or falling apart or losing its power grip, so too does that move into our own body. If you haven't already initiated your own inner awakening without the catalyst of the outside world, the outside world will be the catalyst that will make you start to question your own version of reality and what you thought was true. And even though I think the initial human emotional and psychological reactions to that for us can be fear, at first we might spiral out a little bit or panic because what we think we're in control of, we realize we're not in control of. Actually, what you then get back to is that deeper sense of yourself and your soul self. Your soul self came here and has tried to fit itself into the human world. And the human world is a very tight outfit for the soul self as it currently stands. So what many, many, many millions of us around the world are doing now is learning to unshackle ourselves. And as we are doing that, we're also seeing the system itself lose its stability. My guides have always said that the rising consciousness is also going to hit the powers that be. Sometimes I think you hear stories out there, or I've seen this perspective from certain people, where they have a belief that there is this overlord on the planet or a group on the planet who are fully in control, and sometimes you see people go down this doom and gloom path. And what my guides have always said is no one on the planet is getting away from this rising consciousness, and they've always said that there's a lot of infighting in those groups. There are multiple groups who, if you like, don't have the highest good in mind for the world, but they're all imploding on and with each other as well. And this is stuff that many of us will never even come to see or know. It's going on behind the scenes in places that we don't know. So what they always remind us is we are far more powerful than we realize. Not just we, the individual, I mean, that's important to look at, but more than that, we, the people. And the power of us as people and as biological technology. That's what they refer to us as. They say you are biological technology, and the technology in your body has not been turned on the way it's potentially allowed to be. And that's what this season is about, how much of our power can come back. So the global systems that are, shall we say, very inequitable around power, very inequitable around equality, whether you look at that through an economic lens or whether you look at that through the lens of who's allowed to do what, who's allowed to be what, this group is, this group isn't. All of that is in this spin cycle. So perspective check, theme number 1, old world breakdown for a new world breakthrough. So in a way, you have to hold your nerve. You have to stay aware of how all these things are affecting you. And if you're doom scrolling, you need to get hold of yourself and stop doing that, because all you will do, as you said, Pam, energy becoming magnetic, you will magnetize those negative energies to yourself in your personal life if all you're doing is looking out at the world and going, well, this place is just so negative, because it holds everything. And we do need to find, as you said, the beauty, the joy, the love, and the connection. So, theme number 2, world leadership, unsettled shifts and unexpected changing of the global old guard. Unsettled shifts and unexpected changing of the global old guard. And when I got this theme, I was shown very surprising things. Like it might, I don't know what it's going to look like, but it looked a little bit like, imagine 2 world leaders who suddenly either get toppled or changed or something quite dramatic happens, the kind of thing that you wouldn't expect to see coming, or that people aren't not prepared for. But it was a very unsettled shift in world leadership and an unexpected changing of the global old guard. So nothing is quite as it seems. And if you're looking at the picture right now and going, well, in a year it's going to look like this, you're probably wrong. Not to dismiss anyone's feelings or intuitions, but we're going to see in the same way that you've spoken about seismic activity, think of energetic seismic activity when it comes to global systems and world leadership. There's going to be a lot of unsettled energy and shifts. And then in tandem with this theme, the other piece I got was economic shifts. I didn't know what that meant, Pam, but it's interesting what you just shared about energy. But economic shifts and revolution energy will emerge as a result of people being and feeling squeezed. Now we're already seeing it. It's already happening. I mean, even just this past weekend in Los Angeles, we're seeing that. But it's global. And you mentioned some of the countries, some of the incidences. And the second half of the year, revolution energy does seem to go up. And it does seem like it will carry on a little bit, maybe at least until the middle of next year. But I found it interesting, Pam, that you mentioned 2044. So maybe we can come back to that after I've finished here. The third theme, galactic events and unexplained phenomena. We are meant to remember our position in the universe, not just who we are on Earth. And this will continue to increase. So galactic events and unexplained phenomena. I was with someone at the weekend who was talking about their UFO experiences and recounting them in very vivid detail. And I thought, this is one example of galactic events, unexplained phenomena. You went through a few things that made me go, I see where that theme's showing up in your research and what you were speaking about underwater. But my guides of many years said we are meant to remember our position in the universe. And for those of us here now, we're going to, in our lifetime, realize that we are not just human beings on Earth. We are far more galactically oriented than we've ever been led to believe. And we're going to come to understand and know that in a deeper way in our lifetimes. So it feels like whatever those details are going to be in the second half of this year, there is going to be a surge around that. And gradually more and more people will start to, even if they don't see themselves that way, begin to question the narrative they've been given about who we are, the history of Earth, all of it. And then the fourth theme I have here is trust of self and trust of who you are as an inner journey. And this occurs as a mirror of trust issues that people are having with the old system. Can you trust yourself to become who you are and allow that out? So as people are questioning their trust in the system and how we're looked after, the systems that supposedly support us that are wavering, leadership, it reflects on who are we and can we trust ourselves? Can we trust who we are in this world? So many of us were raised or conditioned to believe there were certain things we should or shouldn't do, could or couldn't do. Many of those things might be great guidance for life, but many of those things were inherited beliefs or conditioning from a prior generation and generations around controlling us from our impulses. So there are going to be a lot more people, and I think we've seen this over recent years anyway, but there are going to be a lot more people taking really bold moves in their life. Things that maybe they wouldn't previously have given themselves permission to do, or being a bit more radical in their choices, being a bit less afraid to say what they feel, do the thing they want to do. So those were the four themes that I received. And then, Pam, I shared with you before we got onto this broadcast that at the beginning of this year, I normally do like an annual energy update as well. And I had no voice, so I had to do a written document. And as I was gathering the themes, I was guided back to that document. There are just a few things that I wrote on that document in January that lit up for me when I was going through about 10 of the themes. And these were things that I was guided to share today. So a spiritual focus for the rest of the year will be, what will you allow? What will you allow? What will you allow for yourself and your personal experience on Earth? So this question will be one that many of us will make great progress on answering this year. You may not fully know the answer, but you might really be asking it right now. It might be you're questioning relationships in your life. You're questioning the way you're showing up in your relationships. You might be questioning certain people that you're in relationship with and how healthy the dynamic is or isn't. But equally, a lot of this will focus on what you feel you're here to do and experience. So it will be a lot more to do with what kind of work do you want to do on the planet? How do you want to work? Perhaps you don't want to work and you want to find a different way of living and existing. And you alluded to that, Pam, with people beginning to do things their own way and kind of step out of traditional systems in that way. But the theme here, and this is just something to sit with in your spiritual journey, What will you allow into your life is different from what do you want. What will you allow into your life? So what do we want can be a great starting point. You know, you might say, oh, well, I want this really great job. And you might put your focus there. But then the question is, will you allow it to happen? Because in order to allow yourself to make any shift in your life that's different to where you are now, there are going to be things you have to let go of. And there are going to have to be receivings that you're willing to allow in. And both of these things for you might cause changes to your conditioning. So the things you have to let go of might be certain parts of your identity, perhaps certain relationships, and you might have triggers around that. You might think, well, I'm not allowed to change this relationship, or it's not fair if I leave my workplace and want to go over here. How will people cope without me? So that will work on your people-pleasing conditioning, putting other people above your own true needs. But then equally, if this great job that you think you want will be like an elevation for you in what you allow yourself to experience on earth, it's going to be deserving and allowing abundance to come to you that your energy field is going to have to allow in. Perhaps you grew up being told, you're not allowed this. Well, we never have much, so just make the best of it. You know, you're going to have to break through a lot of the old programs. So what do you want can be the ignition question, but then what will you allow becomes the healing process to get you to that place of what you want. It's the key to manifesting. So what will you allow into your life? Then a couple of the others that I wanted to share: strong healing and manifestation energies in 2025. Strong healing and manifestation energies in 2025. So the energies this year will see you supported to make the changes that help you allow in what you desire and you're here to manifest. So I think I've gone through a little bit of this. I'm going to move forward, but I just want to touch again on one thing here. I'll use this example. So for example, yeah, I'm being told to do this, even though it kind of backs up what I just said. Apparently we need to hear it. For example, maybe you were never allowed freedom as a child because you were made to be responsible for others very early in life. Perhaps you were punished or chastised if you weren't tending to the emotional or practical needs of your siblings or your parents. So if this was your story, your body will still be holding an energy signature of responsibility that is connected to the feeling that you will be punished if you don't remain highly responsible. So this feeling contains both fear of being punished again and stored memory of trauma or hurt that was experienced during the first punishments that can now be healed and released as you start to step toward freedom and away from responsibility. There will be an energy cleanse that you go through as you move through this process. So this is how healing works for all of us. When we shed an old pattern, we also shed the emotions, the thinking associated with how or why the pattern was created in the first place. It's why healing can be a very emotional journey of release, and one that we tend to do in layers and steps so that our body and our energy field can acclimatize to each new stage as we go through it. So be kind to yourself if you're processing a lot. And, you know, anyone who's sensitive, I think you can't, even if you're managing to stay very stable, you can't avoid some of those intense purge moments that many of us are going through to get to the next place, to become new energy that matches the world that we're moving into. And this links back to what will you allow? A global focus of this year, and I shared this in January, will be what will we allow as a people? What will we allow as a people to be done to us, toward us, and around us? Us includes the earth herself, nature, animals, and all beings. So this will be a year of reckoning between people and those in power, as more shadows will quickly reveal themselves, especially from April 2025 onwards, I wrote in January. And the darker side of our systems will become increasingly revealed, exposed, and outed. For some of you, this will not be a surprise at all, but for many, there will be shock, grief, and disorientation as more of these things come to light. Remember, the temptation to be victorious or say, I told you so, to any of these people does not help at all and comes from a wounded place. So be compassionate where and when you can, and it will be better for them and also for you. As a result of what gets revealed, the corruption, it will be a year of fire in people. Strong feelings, strong fire inside, strong boundaries, strong passions, strong changes of direction. So a lot of changes of direction for people. Those of you who are here as activists for change in some of the more shadowy areas of our world are usually doing it because you have walked in darker territories in other lifetimes and timelines. So you're well equipped to go head to head with those playing with darker or lower agendas in this life. But, and this is important, even though you may be built for activism in this life, this will be a year when you will come more into your inner vulnerability and heart, sometimes triggered by grief over world or personal events, and partly just because heart energy is the currency of the future. So we're all being brought into our hearts now at rapid speed. And this is a good thing, because a bigger and more present heart will actually help you to become more powerful and compassionate in your mission and in your life. But as the heart's opening, it can push on us. So that's referring to the healing that many of us go through as we take this journey. And lastly, I'll share this from the January, all new levels, breakthroughs, and the end of inner suppression. So this fire that we're going to be feeling is going to push many of us into becoming loving action in the world. And many of us will experience ourselves in completely new ways of living that will seem very different to how we behaved before or experienced our lives. So for some of you, that might already be happening, but for most of us, it's going to be the seeds of that right now. We're going to be at the beginning of those journeys. You might just be beginning to venture into new territory or think a slightly different way. So breakthroughs will abound in the energy of 2025 because it is a year that will have the energy of a firework, in that it will be dazzling, surprising, magical, and sometimes will also feel dangerous. There will be many things rolled into this 1 year, and sometimes all in the same day. So remember patience, and that however bad things might look in one moment, within days and weeks, transformative energy will come along and lift and shift things. This will happen with both personal and world events. It's interesting, a friend of mine in a location where they just went through something very dramatic. I don't watch the news as a rule, but a news headline came across my radar and I reached out to that friend to see if they were okay. And they said, oh God, it was so different to how it was reported, which of course we all know. And any of us who've been in any of those situations, and I've been in many global moments over the last, 10 plus years in my life, particularly, and you see the news story and you think, well, that's not actually how it feels in our community. It's not quite so dark or fear only as the news story wants to tell the public and alarm the public. So it's very interesting to kind of yet again understand that in each of these moments, the rise of community, the rise of people helping people, the rise of us rallying round to support each other is what never gets reported. And that's very interesting because that's our power. So our power in those events is not being reported. What we're supposed to fear is being reported. How awful the world is what's being reported. So you have to be very careful around how you emotionally respond to something you hear or learn, and notice if there's a trigger, but do your due diligence and do a bit more research. Don't just believe the first messenger. If it's something you need to look into it a bit further. And as you pull at the threads, you'll find that it's a bigger story than you thought it was or were led to believe. And that this is the new speed and energy of life. And we are now learning to roll with the bigger waves that we were perhaps shielded from in the past. But we are ready now to surf, swim, and dive deeper than before. And then lastly, Pam, this was a theme I shared in January, but prepare your body. It generates your life force. So as much as you can, and in whatever small ways you can make a start, make your physical health and body more of a priority this year. If you are dealing with health challenges, then your focus will just need to go towards your healing mostly. But if you're mostly in good health, beginning to develop a higher relationship with your body will not only be good for you, but many of us are going to feel called to do so. In other cases, you may be driven towards a new level of self-care by a bout of ill or compromised health that encourages you to make changes around the way you care for yourself. I can vouch for that. I had my own experience in January that definitely deepened my care of myself. And I think that message about physical health, I just want to qualify. It doesn't mean we all have to become marathon runners, and it doesn't mean we all have to only eat organic. I think it's about making small changes for most people and just including one new area of consciousness around the way you treat your body. It can become then it becomes a slow but steady runaway train. I think sometimes people hear that and they beat themselves up. They go, oh yeah, I should be doing more exercise, or I should be. Beating yourself up is a stop sign. That's what the Z's, my guides, always say. They say, judging yourself is the fastest way to stop yourself. So if you catch yourself, because we live in such a culture where we're shown this image out there, often of very unhealthy people who look healthy. You know, I've got lots of friends who come from the health and wellness fitness industries, and they constantly tell me, they go, that person is really quite sick. Yes, they have six-pack abs, but they're really starving their body, or they're not doing it, you know, in a way that's healthy. So I only share that because there are many fit people out there who are very healthy, but we're also sold this image of what looks good versus what's actually true and healthy for each body. And all of us have a very different body type, a very different composition. We have different needs. What is healthy for one person might not be healthy for you. So it's about finding your way to just make small increases. And I think that's everything from me.
Beautifully, absolutely beautiful. And I would agree with every single word you said there. You know, from an astrological point of view, everything was resonating. I was again kind of planets ricocheting through my mind as you went through, because you know I would agree with every single piece of that, and it's thrilling because it does really suggest, with only 6 months to go, how fast these 6 months are going to move in terms of change, doesn't it? And the shift from the head to the heart is so absolutely fundamental in surfing this well. Because we've just been so encouraged to live in the mind, haven't we? Information age and TikTok and Twitter and attention span of a hamster, everything's sort of mental and informational. But actually, this is the foundation of the shift is the heart. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely beautiful.
It was interesting too. By the way, I look like I'm in a sauna here. I've got some lights because I'm in England. I'm in my apartment in England, and they're so hot. I didn't realize until I'm underneath them. So. Forgive, I'm clearly doing a very appropriate detox while we go through this. But you know, one thing I wanted to ask you about, Pam, you mentioned 2044. Can you share a bit more about that? Because that's the first time I've heard that date.
Yes, that is how long Pluto will be in Aquarius. And so we will see a massive revolution through that period in literally the people on the streets, but also developments in aviation are going to be huge, developments in transport of all kinds, the greater understanding of our neural networks, our consciousness, that's going to be absolutely huge. Changes in the socioeconomic structure, very much what you were saying, to be much less top-down, unequal, vertical, much more horizontal. It's going to be grassroots up. You know, I was listening to a lady just a couple of days ago who is in contact with hundreds of what are called intentional communities around the world. People coming together around around the intention of love, or sharing, or food growing, or child minding, or whatever it is. Hundreds of them all over the way. As you said, we don't hear that on the news. So every time Pluto has moved through Aquarius, there has been this shift from very rich people at the top, poor people telling poor people at the bottom what to do, to a much more equitable, not perfectly equal, but equitable society, economically, in terms of legal rights, just the whole structure will shift. And of course, these energy shifts with 0 point energy, magnetism as energy, that will enable a lot of that too. But we will see very big financial changes in our world. And although there's huge pressure that from the top that will be centralized, history teaches me from those previous Pluto and Aquarius cycles, there's always been a shift towards decentralization, power back to the people financially. But we've got to step in and take it. It won't just be handed to us. Hence the revolutionary bit. So yes, and we are going to see it changes beyond our vocabulary and comprehension between now and 2024. Even 2 and 3 years down the road, I think our world is going to be so different.
And where that tracks for me is I've always had this feeling from these guys that for example, by 2044, the galactic nature of our world will just be very clear. So that makes sense that 19 years from now, especially when you talked about aviation and other things that we know will be brought in if there is more of a merging of those worlds. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
And Aquarius is linked to the Galactics because it's ruled by you. That is, the foreigner, the outsider, the maverick, the galactic beings. But of course, we are galactic beings.
We are. Yes, that's true. That's true.
So it is a reunion with our galactic family. And so many people channel galactic beings now. That they are apparently all around us all of the time, cheering us on to come back into balance and reconnect with them. And I think if we can see that as our framework, it's thrilling. It's absolutely thrilling.
Yes, and it's funny, my guides, the Z's, have always said that they're a group, they're a collective, and they've always said we're a voice of galactic source energy. So some of them have been incarnate as humans, some of them haven't, but they say we're connected galactically. And so our point of reference is bridging you to galactic energy. So on that note, shall I bring them in and you can have a chat to them and we'll see what your questions prompt?
Yeah, that would be absolutely wonderful. People always loved it. I adore hearing Z. So yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great. I'm just going to wipe my face though. Let's do that. Let's the learning of new lights. It's actually very warm in England. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, unusual. Oh, you look wonderful, glowing.
Yeah, there's nothing like a little detox, is there, Pam? Okay. Good. A pleasure to be with you and all of you who are gathered here in your column of light. We are very familiar with those who gather around the messages from Lee and us, but particularly your community, Pam. You are being a conduit for a column of light for your community, and they are also a column of light with and for you. And that is what you are tapping into right now. While the Earth's consciousness gets increasingly, shall we say, old, limited, or in some cases seemingly boring to many of you because its limitations are beginning to be revealed, there are a whole group of you, and in fact this group is made up of many, many, many groups worldwide, of which both you and Lee and your groups are one of the many, many. You are groups who are beginning to use the column of light to not only connect for your own benefit so that you can once more have the oxygen that you need in order to survive as a soul who is creating oneness consciousness on Earth, but also to help bring it to the Earth and ground it. In that sense, you are gardeners of light on the planet. You are here to tend to and nurture the rise of light. And as you do so, you feel at home because it is your mission to do so. So that is why you feel at home. But what you do is you provide that sustenance for others on the planet, just as there are those humans on the planet right now who are providing for all of you in a different way. Perhaps it is the way they help prepare your food or the buildings they have created for you to live in. So you are all a web helping each other. You all have your roles. But for the purposes of today and the conversation we are about to have with you, we wanted to remind you all of the column of light that you are both in and co-creating and stabilizing on Earth. Good. So, without further ado, whichever direction you wish to take this, Pam, we trust your guidance.
Wow, that was absolutely beautiful, Aziz. Thank you so much for that. Lee has shared much richness about the next 6 months. Is there any area you would actually like to expand on terms of what he said that we should be aware of, and give us any insight and advice on that?
We will say that for those of you who tune into these frequencies, it is most important for you to work with your fear of revolution. For historically, your bodies and your soul memories remember times of revolution on Earth, and some of you may have been very front line in those revolutions. So there are very few on the planet who feel joy around the idea of revolution, though they do exist. They are often the freedom fighters or those who know that until the revolution happens, there cannot be a freer world. So they are desperately waiting for it. But there are most of the rest of you who recognize that revolution brings with it, in some cases, loss of life, suffering, damage, the creation of fear, the creation of fight or division, all of which are not oneness qualities. So it can be a little jarring to the part of you that wants oneness to understand that revolution is necessary. And we will tell you that, as you alluded to, Pam, the revolution does not have to look the way your memories tell you it will look. There was a time on Earth where revolution did look like taking to the streets. In this time on Earth, while that will sometimes be how it plays out, it is a revolution of technology and consciousness working in tandem that is shifting the planet. The gift of your technological communication, in particularly the last 20 to 30 years, has been that you as a people are far easier to connect with worldwide, meaning you cannot be quite so controlled in subgroups where information about other parts of the world gets edited away from you. Meaning you all have a deeper understanding of what's going on worldwide than previous generations were able to have at such speed. Now, we understand that many of you will say that this can cause a dizzying effect to you, which is true. It can make you feel a little overloaded. But the positive is you're able to reach each other, you're able to see each other, and you are no longer having gatekeepers of information between you and what is actually happening on the planet. So while we do understand that technological overwhelm needs to be managed, we also will agree with many of you that technology can be used in devious ways. For the most part, you have been in a revolution of technology and consciousness on the planet that is changing things from the inside out. So there are many of you listening to this who will not look like traditional revolutionaries, but you are revolutionary because you are bringing the column of light onto Earth. You are running it through your own body. You are perhaps sharing it with a friend, or perhaps you are one who shares it with the world at large. And that is how you spread and fertilize consciousness on the planet. And that is a revolution. So understand the word revolution does not have one fixed definition of how it looks. And if you start to get a little panicky in yourself about the idea of what you are imagining, we would ask you to calm yourself and say, where is this vision or idea coming from? And some of you who are intuitive will say, well, this is my intuition and this is the image I just got from the future. And we say, how do you know you're not seeing the past? You see, the past and the future collide. You live in a circular universe where time is concerned. So sometimes those of you who think you are having very definite visions about the future, you will only know that's true if and when it happens. In other cases, what is most important for you with any vision or experience on Earth is to ask yourself, how am I processing this? And am I happy with how I'm processing it? And if you aren't, so for example, if a vision of revolution is causing you fear, sit with the fear. If you need to journal to try and understand what is going on, do so. Maybe it is a past life you are remembering. Maybe it is a worst case fear scenario that you are processing. But ask yourself, in this moment, am I in an obvious revolution that looks like this vision? And if the answer is no, then know that you are working with potential energetics, not actualities. So, this is very important, and that is the piece we would share, that all of you need to check your emotional reactions to these potential realities. And that is maturity too, where future visions come in. We have explained this many times, but a future timeline is a future possibility. And there are strong possibilities, some that can be almost certain. But every timeline moves as humans do, as consciousness does, and as those creating reality do. So understand that nothing is set in stone in the future that you should spend a lot of time being worried about today. Instead, recognize that the idea of the future has put you into a fear spin, which means something else could do that too. So this is a good opportunity for you to work on your fear spin, to let it go. That is part of your healing.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ziz. And also, if I'm thinking astrologically, there seems to be an impetus for more galactic connections starting literally this July that will also help us understand our consciousness in a much bigger way and our multidimensionality in a bigger way. Am I correct in assuming it's going to start that soon?
Yes, because your astrology is actually a galactic map. Astrology is galactic maps. And these maps were received through those, we would say, humans who were able to interpret them, but those humans were not human exactly. Some of the first visitors to the Earth were the ones who worked with humans to interpret what these galactic maps from the stars meant. And as you have gone through history, there have been many among you, yourself included, who are able to use both the intuitive aspect of yourself and the more learned, shall we say, past life scholar version of yourself that can tap into the history of the past and the future of what's to come. That's what makes you very electrically thrilled by your work, Pam, because when you are in your work, you are both stretching across time back to the past where you did this before and understood this before, and you are also reaching into the future, which is another timeline that you understand because you can access it as an intuitive. So it makes your world very rich because you are no longer just in 3D reality in this current linear time. You have stretched your energy field in such a way that you become electrically charged. And that is what these galactic maps, astrology and other maps that were left on Earth, were here for, to help remind you and guide you back to this point in time where all worlds would begin to collide once more. Now, we will not paint a simple picture of this for you. It would be lovely to think, wouldn't it, that returning to your galactic origins is nothing but fluent and peaceful. But of course, the galaxy holds all kinds of life forms and energies that do not all harmonically interact. The octave of oneness, which we have spoken of as the highest octave of the universe, does exist galactically, but it also exists in a dimension on Earth. It is here on Earth, and it is practiced by many of you for sometimes long periods of time, on a certain day, certain weeks, certain months. But this galactic reunion that many of you are having is happening first through the intuitive body and the energy field. The intuitive body is what opens to allow the mind's control to break down so that you can let the energy field return to and resume its galactic energy imprint. You were taught, many of you, to see galactic energy, or we will use the example of extraterrestrial, if you like, as other. But in fact, what we would say, it is origin, meaning you on Earth have always been blended with the universe. You were just told a different story about who you are when at a certain point in history it became convenient for that story to be told to you because you would be better controlled.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Ziz. And it seems to be that we are actually in the process of the biggest jump for humanity in evolutionary terms that has occurred in many thousands of years.
Yes, yes. And it will take some time, it will take some decades. We have said before that 2025 onwards, even though you are still dealing with some of these, shall we say, frequency wars that play out on Earth, you will start to see the emergence of more new Earth aspects, information, technology, and ways of being. 2025 onwards was always destined to be the year where the seeds of all of this start to become slowly but surely more visible. What you are going to see over the course of the next 2 to 3 decades is a merging of the consciousness of Earth with the consciousness of the universe. But in order for that to be fully allowed to take place, the old guard has to be, shall we say, challenged and diminished in its power. That is why you are seeing so much, we will call it panic on Earth. Some of you are feeling the panic empathically. You are feeling a little panicked about this time, and some of you interpret that as if you are correct that things are going to be bad. You feel panic, and so you tell yourself, well, this must mean what's coming isn't good. And we say, no, it doesn't mean that at all. The panic many of you are feeling is the panic that is in the air. There are those who are in charge of, let's say, some of the agendas that keep humanity limited or controlled. They are also in panic. Hence, they are making fast and big moves. Now, it was always destined that they would not be able to, shall we say, clamp consciousness going forward. And this was the period of time where they would try. And you have seen that play out over the last 4 or 5 years on Earth. But you have also, as a result of that, seen a people revolution play out, which is more people waking up to some of the falsehoods that have been hoisted upon you. And more people are beginning to recognize, no, that does not smell right. That does not feel right. That does not seem right. That is what is the slow, energetic revolution that is occurring. And then there will be those who will, we will put it this way, tackle the bullies head on. It won't be all of you. There will be those on the planet who are built for that, who are designed for that, who were either the bullies in another life or know who these bullies are from another life and are not as afraid of them as some are. So between all of you, you will usher in this new age, and you are ushering it in now. We understand when you look at the outside world, those of you who want to see physical changes happen faster, it can be frustrating. But we will tell you that the revolution is already here. It's already active, and it can't be stopped now. It is too far along, and you are going to be ushered through it in the coming years. But what we will say to you each as individuals is to take care of your personal revolution. Your personal revolution will play into the global revolution. Sometimes some of you worry, am I doing enough? And we say, go where your energy calls you. If you aren't doing something in a certain area, ask yourself, is it really that I am not disciplined enough to do it? Or is it that I cannot find my way to flow in that direction, so I should trust that? Which directions can you flow in? Which relationships can you flow in? That is very important. As you are letting go of old patterns and old paradigms, it's important for you to open up to the ones that bloom. That is how you create a new world and a new garden of consciousness on the planet. Pam, you are an example of that. Lee is also doing the work he wishes to do in the world, and we know for sure that at least 75% of you who are tuning into this are doing exactly the same in your way, in your life. It doesn't mean that any of you that we just mentioned will still have a life that looks exactly like this in 5 to 10 years. It might, and your energy might feel different in it, but for many of you, there will be shifts that will take place. So you are all changing and becoming more, we will say, galactic, but more than that, for galactic can be a somewhat scientific word. What we would like to point you towards is you are becoming more attuned with the frequency of oneness on the planet. Oneness is a true home for all of you spiritually. And so many of you are practicing oneness as often as you can and sharing oneness as often as you can. It is very hard to sustain it on Earth in its current energy field. but there are many of you who are getting better at increasing the amount of time you can be in it and share it all of the time. So that is what we will say in answer to that.
Beautiful, Ziz. Thank you. And just one final question. 2025 seems to be the greatest year of change and turbulence. And the next 3 years seem to be particularly accelerated, but smoothing out a little way as we get beyond 2025. Would you have that perspective?
Yes, we have always said that 2025 to 2030 is going to be a key in the Earth moving into what we would call a brighter direction. But you don't get to a brighter direction without kicking up a lot of dust in the cleaning process. And it is also true that this second half of the year is set to be a little more, shall we say, volcanic. And what that will do for the planet is it will accelerate some of these shifts. You see, without propulsive moments or propulsive events, the Earth and her people do not necessarily change with any sense of speed. So, even though there will be some moments and events in the next 9 to 12 months that will be quite alarming, or shall we say triggering in the moments that they happen, what you will all see down the road is that they were key moments in bringing more dramatic change to Earth. Because what happens when we will say, be it climate events or human events that change the landscape come along, is it wakes everyone up to what's important. And the more people wake up to what's important and the spell of human life gets broken for a period of time, that is when people activate in ways that they are not willing to have the lid put back on the bottle that they are contained in afterwards. So, as much as we know as humans you would wish for things to be smoother sooner, we will tell you that some of these propulsive or more explosive events are required for the changes that you wish to see. We are not saying that we are in charge of that. We are simply observing what is playing out on an energetic level. But we are saying that you signed up for these times, and you are correct that things will, we will use the word stabilize, even though that is a little controversial because you are a planet in strong movement for the next couple of decades. But a new frequency will be stabilized when you get through this year, particularly from summer 2026 onwards. That will be more evident, but we would argue it's evident right now. It just depends on how you're looking, where you're looking, and when you are looking. Many get very focused on the most dramatic thing that's happening, and they miss seeing the beauty of the small acts of consciousness that are happening around the drama. You see, you've all been trained to focus on drama, the biggest noise, the loudest noise. And that is actually a very, we will say, seductive way of being for you as humans. But you've been trained into that. Your true nature is to focus on subtlety and peace. And that true nature is what many of you are allowed to once more connect with inside yourselves after thousands and thousands and thousands of years where that was discouraged and in many cases forbidden. The time of that is ending.
I couldn't be more grateful. We couldn't be more grateful, Lee and the Z's. That has been really spectacular and magnificent insights and advice for us in these huge times of change and transformation. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
A pleasure to be with all of you, and there is no gratitude required, for we are all working toward the same goal here. So we have been very pleased to be a part of this conversation that all of you are holding in your hearts and now emanating out into the world. And that is how it works. So, in peace, in love, and in oneness to all.
Wow.
I love it when you talk to them, Pam.
Well,
We'll have to find a way to do more of that, I think, somehow.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty strong, isn't it? I
It
mean,
is
they
pretty
come
strong.
very clearly, in fact, I've noticed over the years they've become clearer and more direct and more
Hmm.
specific. You obviously you're channeling them all the time, but
It
for
happened
me,
in 2019. There was I went through a very big personal shift in 2019, and they also went through a shift. And then 2020 happened, and I went, oh, I get it. And then from 2020, it was like the gloves were off, because I think the gloves were off. Up until then, it was almost like preparing us, calibrating us. But I think 2020 was this massive 360 in the world that brought a lot more people on board. And I think at that point, I think as more of us were on board with awakening, I think messages got clearer, stronger, faster, because there was more urgency.
yeah, yeah, they are not holding back. I mean,
No.
they are crystal clear, but immensely helpful because it does help to kind of crystallize what we're going through. And when we can feel day to day, I mean, the astrology helps massively, but still day to day, there's so much going on. To have that piercing clarity from a very high perspective is just invaluable. It's really priceless. So
Yeah, and equally, for someone like me who doesn't do the historical research that you do, that's not my area. When you were sharing all your pieces at the beginning, it's really nice for someone like me who gets intuitive information about what's going on energetically to hear some of the things that you're seeing and the conclusions and the parallels that you draw between it all. It's really helpful. So, it just makes me think about all the people who are tuning in on this right now. We all play our part, don't we? It's like sometimes you can look at your friend and go, oh, my friend's so good at this. And that doesn't matter. Your friend's supposed to let your friend be good at that. What are you good at? We each have our thing, and we're supposed to be a big tapestry. And if we each bring our thing and let it out and don't suppress ourselves. And you and I both went through our own little baptism of fire with coming out as an astrologer and a channeler. I think that's what this time calls for each of us to let our thing out and trust that we as a group, therefore, will be the right equation for these times. But none of us can do it all.
exactly. And it's so Aquarian because Aquarian energy can be quite paradoxical in that you, from a deeper level, are able to find and express your unique essence, your absolutely unique essence. And in doing that, find your gift to give to the group, find your gift to give to the whole, the collective humanity, the galactic family, etc. So it's this paradox of a stronger sense of self, but wanting to give back to the group, the collective, and that's what we're all doing in our various ways.
Brilliant. Well, this was lovely to do with you. Thank you so much. And to everyone who tuned in, I know many of you signed up to watch this on the solstice. So happy solstice if you're watching it on solstice. And then Pam and I said we're each going to put this on our YouTube channels in July, probably the first half of July. So Pam, I'm guessing for the people who are watching this on your channel, they won't need any explanation. But if you're watching this on my channel, Pam, where is the best place for people to find you and if they want to see more of your work and all your brilliant videos?
Oh, bless you. Just Pam Gregory Official on YouTube. Pam Gregory Official. Lots of scammers out there, but that is my one and only channel. So that's where I'm super super busy at the moment because that's the fastest and the biggest way I can get information out for free to a lot of people. So that's my focus. Much less writing now. Yep.
And I should also say your own videos are brilliant, but you've done an amazing job over the years of interviewing so many interesting people coming in from all different angles of this new world. And I've been interviewed by you a few times, but you have such rich interviews. So for anyone who is new to Pam, definitely go to Pam's YouTube channel and subscribe and watch all the free goodies there. And then if you don't know me, because we're on Pam's channel, I'm at leeharrisenergy.com. And on YouTube, I'm at Lee Harris Energy. And I do a monthly, about 30-minute energy update on the first of every month, which goes out for free on YouTube. And then on my website, I have lots of other free offerings. I also create music, which you can stream freely on all the platforms. And I have various courses for people who want to take a deeper dive with me. So that's how.
always listen to your energy updates every single monthly because they always tally with what I'm seeing astrologically. So highly recommend all of Lee's very varied and rich work. It's all incredibly gifted. So thank you for all of your contributions, Lee. And
Thank you.
I love this.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for being up for doing this. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. And we hope that it can, we hope that even just one or two nuggets from today can hopefully bring you more empowerment and more light and more connection for what you're doing in the world. And whatever you're doing in the world, we salute you. One thing that my guides always say, which I love and I feel the truth of, is there will be some of you out there maybe who do put things out there for thousands or millions even, and then there will be one of you out there who is raising a child, or you're influencing your grandchild, and that, as Z's always say, it's all so important. It's all equally important. So whatever you're doing in the world, we salute you and thank you for tuning in. Yeah, thanks, Pam.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Lots of love, my friend.
And sending love to everybody out there. Thank you for being with us and listening.
Take care, everyone.